don't let anybody kid you or fool you into thinking Islam is the religion of peace. Religion of peace. All right, let's get on with it. 3 reasons why for some time now, I am no longer part of this tyrannical belief system. You be your own judge, you make your own judgments, it's up to you. All right, so I have some notes here, so I'm gonna read a little bit off of them. So reason number 1, and by the way, I highly suggest you stay until reason number 3 because I've got a painful story to tell you, okay? Personal story, all right? So anyway, number 1, intolerance of others. And it's really hilarious to me when Muslims try to make it look like that Islam is the religion of tolerance, it is the religion of peace, Prophet Muhammad lived alongside Christians and Jews, which by the way he taxed them, all right? Anyway, that's hilarious to me. That's hilarious because for every one seemingly tolerant thing Uncle Mo did, him and his boys have done 10 intolerant things, all right? And a lot of times those seemingly intolerant actions were just for political reasons, all right? So, I'm gonna read you a verse straight from the Quran. The Quran is the equivalent of the Bible, the Muslim Bible. Okay, that's the word of God. Uncle Mo went to the cave, he channeled the word of God. So, the verse, I'm gonna read it in Arabic and I'll translate it for you and you can go and look it up for yourself. So, it's from surah called Al-Bayyina, all right? Albayana. Al-Bayyina, all right? I'm going to read it in Arabic first, and I'll give you the translation. إن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين في نار جهنم خالدين فيها أولئك هم شر البرية, which means those who are the non-believers. So kuffar means somebody who's not believing in Allah, not believing in the true one God. So those who are disbelievers, whether they be the people of the book are the Christians and the Jews, or the mushrikeen. The mushrikeen means the polytheistic people who, like Hindus for instance, Buddhists, anybody who let's say believes in several gods, right? So Hindus would be considered the mushrikeen, right? Fi nari jahannam, which means in hell. Khalidina fiha means they're just staying there. Okay, they're pretty much staying there forever. Ulaika hum sharrul bariya means those are the worst of the bunch. You see? Now, there are at least, I just picked one. It's pretty straightforward, like it's just as straightforward as it gets. There are at least a minimum 10 to 30 other verses in the Quran that pretty much say the same thing. It says, if you're not a Muslim, straight to hell. You just straight to hell. There's no hope for you. You'll go straight to hell. If you're a non-believer, if you're a Christian, Ahl al-Kitab, or a Jew, or if you're a mushrik, so if you're a Hindu, Zoroastrian, if you worship idols, point being, if you're not a Muslim, you go to Nari Jahannam, straight to hell, right? It's like, it's right there in the Muslim Bible, in the Quran. And then some Muslims will come and say, oh, we're tolerant. And they go to Western countries and they're complaining how their people are being intolerant of them. Guess what? The world is your mirror. The fact of the matter is you're intolerant yourself. So because the world mirrors your internal state, your intolerance reflects in the outer world. Okay, Islam's tolerant. All right, number 2. And oh yeah, another thing. So when I first immigrated to Canada, I was grew up in the Middle East. My mother tongue is Arabic. I had to, whenever I would shake the hands of a Christian, so anybody that's like white Canadian, I would have to wash my hands after, because they're considered dirty people, right? So there is so much intolerance to anything other than Muslim. And that's just facts straight from the Muslim Bible, straight from the Quran. It's just facts. Like, you can't argue with that. Like, how are you going to argue with this verse and 30 other verses just like it? Okay, number 2. It is extremely outdated. Extremely. So I'll give you some things that actually, like, you're supposed to do if you're in a Muslim country that is actually applying the Sharia law, the Islamic law. So, yeah, by the way, if you have sex outside of marriage, or you cheat, let's say, on your husband or your wife or whatever, you are, according to the Sharia law, you're supposed to be stoned to death. Stoned to death. So you get a group of people, okay? They get stones, and they just start throwing stones on you until you die. Not so outdated, right? I mean, it makes sense. Come on, it makes sense. Come on, I'm being too harsh here. In truth, I'm being too harsh. Come on, that's pretty logical. It's pretty logical if somebody's committing adultery, having sex outside of marriage. It's only right that they get stoned to death, right? Come on. It's the spirit of compassion and love here. So, another outdated piece of poo-poo is, what is this? I'm gonna pause this because I can't even read my own scribbles here. Took me like 2 minutes to read my own scribbles. So yeah, if you're a thief, you're caught stealing, your hand should be cut off. Yeah, your hand, they should just cut off your hand. You can see how ridiculous this is? You see how ridiculous this is? That's according to the Sharia law. Like, that's the Islamic law. You know, a lot of Muslim countries don't do that because of how absurd it is, okay? But they should be doing that according to Islamic law. There's a few countries that still do this kind of stuff, the stoning to death and cutting off the hand, but most don't do it because of the absurdity. You know, like, it's like, can you even get on with the modern world doing these kinds of absurd things? You know? I'm giving you what should be done according to the word of God and according to the word of the holy Uncle Mo. So, who, by the way, is most probably also a pedophile because he married Aisha, and I can't recall what age she was, either 6 or 8. He married her when she was that. I think he had sex with her a little bit later. I think maybe when she was 10 or 11, something like that. I have to refresh my memory on that. Anyway, that's another thing for a whole different video. So, yeah, so hands should be cut off instead of, like, you know, trying to at least, you know, maybe, I don't know, give him a second chance or tell him why he shouldn't do this or give him educational material. You should just cut off their hands. All right, if you're an apostate, meaning if you're born Muslim into a Muslim society, you're no longer Muslim, aka me and many others nowadays, because of they realize how absurd it is. You're supposed to be killed. Yeah, that's the punishment for you being an apostate. You get killed automatically. Okay, automatically they're supposed to cut my head off right now. If I was living in a Muslim country that applies the Sharia law, which again, many countries don't do that anymore because of how absurd it is. All right, so it's very outdated, so intolerant, outdated. Number 3, violent in nature. You can already see some of the violent things that we talked about, but there's an inherent violent nature to the belief system known as Islam. And I'm going to tell you a story, stick around, a painful story in a second. I'm just gonna talk about this a little bit. Islam, in its initial stages, spread through the sword. There's no way around it, folks, okay? There's no way around it. The Muslims formed an army, they united. They fought the Romans, they fought the Persians, and they just spread Islam through the sword. Now, there's an argument for this. Oh, you know, things were pretty violent at the time. That's the only way you spread. You spread it through the sword. Okay, all right, that's a decent argument, right? Nevertheless, for someone, Uncle Mo, claiming this is the religion of peace, started off pretty peaceful, by the way. I think he abused power when he started to grow, right? He started appealing to the poor. He started appealing to the weak ones. I probably would have joined him in his early stages, honestly. Seemed like a pretty cool gig, especially coming from an Arab society that buried their daughters. If you had, not all of them did, obviously, but some like Umar, for instance, buried his daughter He buried her because she's a little baby girl. He wants a baby boy. Okay? So I probably would have even joined him at that time. I'm not gonna lie. It seemed like a good gig in the beginning, but as it grew, the power grew, then they went on the offensive. You see, for someone who claimed this is the religion of peace, to spread it by sword, some will argue it's his companions that spread it later on, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, right? Nevertheless, there's a lot of verses in the Quran. We don't have enough time for all of this to share with you all the verses, but there is sufficient, large number of verses in the Quran that encourage jihad, encourage Muslims fighting the kuffar, the non-believers. Okay, there's an inherent nature to it. And guess what? Where has been the most amount of wars in the last 50 years? Where has there been the most amount of civil wars? Where has there been the most amount of suffering, violence? Oops, it's mostly been in the Middle East. It's mostly been in Muslim countries. You think that's by coincidence? Oh no, it's the Americans, it's the Western people. They're bad people. You know that everybody's blaming them over there. Of course, it's the bad people. It's the American wal Yahud, the Americans and the Jews, right? Blame it on them. Everything is on them. Yeah, I mean, look. So my parents, I'm ethnically Syrian, right? You guys, most of you probably know the terrible things that happened in Syria. And so a lot of people will say, well, it's the Americans and the Russians and the foreign interference. Let me tell you something. I grew up in a household where you got beaten up as a regular thing, okay? These societies are inherently violent. So when you blame it on the external countries only capitalize on an already violent society. There is an inherent violence in not all, of course, but a lot of Muslim societies, and it reflects on their politics, it reflects on their leaders, and it reflects on the wars that happen there. It's simple. It's that simple. Like, I'm to tell you straight up, I grew up fighting kids on the street. I grew up being beaten up by my dad, who himself got beaten up by his dad, and the cycle goes on. There's a lot of violence in there. There is, and it's inherent because of the religion. The religion has an inherent violent base to it. You see, there is a thing called jihad, holy war, and you can wage holy war internally, but it is also highly recommended that you wage it externally. Right? And then they call it the religion of peace. So now the story. I mean, seriously, I can go on for hours here. I don't want to make these videos too long, right? The story here, a close relative of mine, very close, she took off her scarf, hijab, which is mandatory. You're supposed to put it on as a woman. You know why? Because you don't want to seduce the men. Because if the women walk around with their hair flowing, they're going to seduce the men, and the men can't control themselves. She took off her hijab, very close relative of mine, and she got beaten up by her dad. She sent me photos of blood all over her clothes and blood. Guys, she's in her late 20s. She's a grown woman. She's a grown woman. And as soon as she took off her hijab, and she's so brave to do it in a Muslim country, whoa, she got beaten up violently, like blood. I'm talking blood. Okay? Very, very painful stuff. Very painful stuff. Very tyrannical belief system. All right? So don't come and preach it as the religion of Islam, of peace. That's a joke. That's hilarious. That's so funny. All right. I'll see you guys in the next video.